Hey there, you boys, ghouls, and non-Boonarians. It's time for the Doom Train, where we talk about various horror stuff. You probably noticed last time the pilot was called Blood and Sinew, but I like this name way better, and I also like to make train jokes. So get those cabooses in gear, because it's time, and the next stop is never, because the ride never ends. Because the ride never ends. This week we're going to be talking about Over the Garden Wall, probably one of the finest cartoons Cartoon Network has ever produced, and one of the finest cartoons out there, period. It's a short series that aired in 2014, and they love to dole it out there every October and Thanksgiving. But we're doing it as a late Thanksgiving, or a super late Halloween, or a very early Christmas. It's your call, really. So, without further ado, just know that the rest of this podcast was recorded when I was sick, so you're probably gonna notice that I am very slowly dying throughout, and had to remove a lot of coughing. So, have fun with that, and dig the rest of this podcast. A lot of coughing. So, have fun with that and dig the rest of this podcast. Okay, well, first up, I just want to say that, words cannot describe how upset I am that the Bone Zone and the Graveyard Shift seem to be the most popular name for podcast. Thought of a real good one, though. A real winner on our hands. We got the Doom Train. Happily, that doesn't exist. Totally thought that would be a Final Fantasy podcast that hasn't been updated in like 100 years. But I'm taking it now, so we're changing over, y'all. We're gonna... Sorry, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. We are changing over to the Doom Train, and, well, if you don't like it, you can get off the train. See, because I can also make train puns, too. So that's good, and I hope everybody enjoys that. So initially the plan was to keep talking about these Saw movies, but it turns out these start getting real complicated. These apparently start having a really dense continuity, a little bit more than I thought a movie about, ha ha ha, if you want to get out of here, you're gonna have to chew your own arms off, would actually get. But hey, I guess that's what we're living in. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to have a Thanksgiving episode that's actually not coming out on Thanksgiving because it's like the 27th. We're doing a Simpsons thing, but you know, instead of running for 30 seasons and being a beloved staple of American television, we're just some asshole in a room. I cough a lot. I've been getting over a little bit of a cold. So I figure I should just crank this out in the 10 minutes that I'm feeling better. Over the Garden Wall. Did I stutter in that? Over the Garden Wall. It's a real good cartoon. It's 10 episodes long. Each episode is about 10-11 minutes long. Cartoon Network did this one. And I believe it was written by Pat or Patrick. I'm not sure which one he does. I think it's Pat. Pat McHale, who worked on, I believe, storyboarding for Flapjack and Adventure Time, which are both pretty good things to come from. I know a lot of people actually don't like Flapjack, but I think it's the greatest thing ever, and Cartoon Network should be dragged out and shot for not making more of it. Teen Titans Go joke. Anyway, they like to pull this one out right around Halloween and Thanksgiving, to pretend like they don't exclusively show Teen Titans Go all day. So there's that, and I guess it kind of makes up for it because it's real good. And it's about two boys, Wirt and Greg. Wirt is the older boy who is also voiced by Elijah Woods, and Greg, who is voiced by, I don't know, but the person is an actual child, and the acting isn't terrible, and that's a goddamn miracle for children, because everybody knows that children are just terrible actors, except for Stranger Things. We need to do a Stranger Things episode one day. I'm gonna write that down. and they are lost over the garden wall, which is somewhere in this between Victorian and Edwardian period. It's like a forest. The narrative I can most describe it as is Alice in Wonderland, or maybe a little bit of Spirited Away, but specifically borrowing from mostly Americana. So everything is like autumny, and you feel like you are probably somewhere in the deep south or the middle of Dakota or something like that. Sorry, got a little noisy in the background there. In that short break I just took, I thought I was making a joke about Teen Titans Go, and my friend linked me to the Cartoon Network schedule for this week, and it is literally all Teen Titans Go. I thought this was just a goof. I thought I was making a topical joke. I did not know that this is not just true, but perhaps maybe even too true, where it would just be a solid 14 hours of Teen Titans Go. Maybe I'm getting old. I might be getting old. Maybe if I was 10 years old and I saw that Pokemon was going to be on 14 hours each and every day for 7 days a week, I would be pretty pumped. Do kids like Teen Titans Go like that? I don't think so. Speaking of kid stuff, we're going to have to do those weirdly dark Scooby-Doo movies one day. But that's neither here nor there. These two boys they're stuck in a place that is the woods. I'm sorry, the forest. It's just called the forest. That is perpetually stuck somewhere between the 17 and early 1900s. And along the way, they meet a blue jay named Beatrix. I think her name is Beatrice. Who is an extreme cynic. Wirt and Greg, these two boys, which are apparently a real popular cosplay team, and pretty much every duo of people I've known have cosplayed as them, and I'm just gonna add myself to the ranks one day. Wirt is the older boy. He is of a non-specific age. Funny story, I actually got to ask Pat McHale how old are they, and he's deliberately said they don't have a set age. They're just around 16-ish and maybe 5-ish. Wirt is an extreme cynic, and not in the realistic way, but in the this is clearly a detriment way. Greg, the younger brother, is extremely optimistic. It's impossible to get his spirits down, and he is the embodiment of 2006 lol that's so random humor. But it kind of works a little bit because he's a little kid. It kind of makes me remember a little bit of the Rugrats, where they're not afraid of a very dangerous situation for a child. Mostly on the strength of being too ignorant to understand the situation that they're in. But that's fine because Greg is a very endearing character anyway. Especially because, when the series starts, you're just kind of dropped in and the boys are lost in the forest. They're just trying to go home, but we don't really have, much context for why they're there. Which, by the way, we're gonna, spoilers are always happening up in here. We're gonna talk about the whole series, so get ready for that. We're spoiling this boy up and down, except for the comic books because I haven't read them. We're gonna do those comics one day too. The aesthetic of it, like I was saying, was this sort of Victorian old worldy style. Like if you read a lot of children's books that seem to have weirdly way too realistic art that children probably wouldn't like. I feel like everyone has read a bunch of these, but I cannot think of any off the top of my head. Maybe, what's that book called? Mr. Frog and Mr. Toad, I think. Those kind of things would come to mind. Or maybe the actual book Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, not the not the movie. That kind of art style is what I'm talking about. Where it seems to be pulling a lot from that, and also pulling a lot from really old cartoons, and not quite in the same way that Cuphead would, like, that game about 30s cartoons, where they're trying to make these soft, fun parodies that also have weirdly dark stuff sometimes that, 30s cartoons tend to do. But moving in a slightly later era where cartoons are a little bit comfortable telling a straight up narrative, but also at a point where moral values and things have still oddly not caught up to the technology of the time. I have a hard time putting a pinpoint on exactly what that one is, but you know how, like, there'll be morals in a cartoon that don't quite add up to what an actual person would think at the time, but they do seem to have, a very thorough internal logical narrative to it. We've been talking for 10 minutes now. And the series gets real dark, and that's why it's on the Doom Train. Almost said Bone and Sinew, but it's a Doom Train now. Sorry. Everybody get on board the Doom Train. Choo choo, we're boning on ahead? No, that's not quite right. We'll figure it out one day. I'm saying a lot. Maybe I should just not say anything every time I say so I know to go back and erase that later. Huh. It's not a bad idea, actually. Dang it, I just said again. Oh well, you win some, you lose some, sometimes. So the boys go on this magical quest to, just did it again. To get out of the forest, meeting all sorts of fun characters along the way, almost all of which, even the ones that are more or less benevolent, have this very dark overtone to them. Like, they're very suspicious, or there's something else going on that doesn't quite seem right. The first place I go to is Pottsfield, which, I said I was going to spoil it, so I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it. Had a little pun there that I didn't notice that is a twist of the entire episode. Pottsfield is short for a potter's field, which is the term you use for a graveyard of indigenous peoples. Not necessarily Native American. That's not me trying to look for a fun workaround just for any indigenous people. I think that may actually be a biblical term. I'm not sure. But I didn't notice when I was watching it. And the two boys bump into this weird ceremony that's going on that looks like a cult meeting with people who are dressed in like 1890s Victorian Southern garb, and all their heads are pumpkins and their arms are made of straw, and it looks like a big old Halloween fest, and they're dancing around this giant pumpkin man, and it turns out they've smashed some pumpkins on the way in, they've disrupted this festival, and the people are like, hey, wait a minute, you're trying to leave Pottsfield? Nobody gets out of Pottsfield. We're going to have to put you on trial. Dun, dun, dun. And it's getting real suspicious and real scary-like. And this giant pumpkin man that they've, been dancing around, having this ritual around, who has a very, very smooth voice, who I don't remember who he's voiced by, but it was really great, comes down and says, okay, boys, for your deeds and murder, but not murder, I'm just joking. He does say that, that's not me making a goof. I'm sentencing you to a day of hard labor. So then it breaks down into like a musical scene with some very nice classical music playing. Over the Garden Wall has a lot of musical scenes, and they're all like 1920s and 30s, like American music. I don't know what the genre is called, but the kind of thing you would expect in an old cartoon. Sorry, hopefully that cough didn't pick up. Well, that's fine. I'll just remove it. Or maybe I shouldn't have said anything at all. Oops. Well, you guys are going to have to deal with me apologizing for a cough, and then the cough may or may not be there. You're really seeing the human drama that goes into making a podcast, you know? Uh, and that happens, and the last thing they do is they're digging these big old holes, and they're thinking, oh, okay, we're almost done, we just gotta dig these holes. And then Greg finds a skeleton in the hole, and he's like, oh, check this out, hidden treasure, which, what I didn't notice at the time, I think that may be a call back or a call forward to Steven Universe, where one of the characters finds a bunch of bones and says, ho ho, check it out, hidden treasure down here. Uh, and they think, wait a minute, I don't think they just want us to do hard labor. I think they're going to kill us. They're making us dig our own graves. So Beatrice, the bird, picks their locks because, she's a bird. No one's paying a huge amount of attention to her. And Greg and the bird run off, leaving Wirt to try to stall for time and figure out what to do, thinking, oh no, these people are going to murder me and bury me in this hole here. Turns out they're all dead. They're all skeletons, and they're having a big old skeleton party. Those bones, they were digging up one of their buddies to join the party. And it turns out they're fine with letting Greg leave. It was just weird for Greg and Wirt to leave because they're having a big old party. Why would you leave during a party? That's strange. And then they're like, hey, are you sure you really want to leave? And he's like, oh yeah, we're just going to take off. Okay, well, I guess you'll join us soon enough. And they say this such a dark way, like, hey y'all, don't forget, you're gonna die one day. Okay, catch you around. So the show is full of things like that. Or there's this one that reminds me quite a bit of Spirited Away, where they find this house looking for somewhere to rest for a little bit, and in the house is this woman named Auntie Whispers, I believe, who's this big-headed old woman figure who reminds me of what's her name from Spirited Away? I don't think her name was Baba. But the old woman with the big head, the woman who ran the hot spring from Spirited Away, she was basically that character. Who's bossing around the small woman who obviously is supposed to immediately be a love interest for Wirt there, towards the end of his story arc. And she's, giving this young woman all sorts of very cruel and mean instructions on working harder and, bossing her around with this bell. And, the young woman hides Wirt and Greg, and they're hiding in a kettle, or not a kettle, a barrel full of turtles. And Granny Whispers is like, where are those boys? Tell me now. The bell that I'm using to command you commands you. And she's like, hey, look in the barrel. And she's like, okay, I see. You're just telling me that those turtles in these barrels are ripe for eating, and she just eats the turtle alive. Which, setting her up as a little bit of a antagonist there. And the auntie walks upstairs saying, this is all for your own good, because if not, you go back to your wicked ways. Kind of setting up this sort of, addressing the pseudo-Christian subtext that isn't particular to Over the Garden Wall, but is particular to general Americana, if that makes any sense. Like the whole idea of, even though, something isn't necessarily religious in tone, but by nature of being here, it sort of does have that Puritan element to it. Sorry if there are Puritans out there listening and I've hurt your feelings, but that just seems like the general direction of history, that American history is unseparable from that, or at least American culture anyway. So they try to get the girl away from Auntie Whispers, and it turns out the Wicked Ways is the girl being possessed by a spooky monster. And she's going around trying to gobble up their bones and stuff. And Greg saves today because the frog that he has, which is great, and we'll talk about that in a sec, has eaten the bell inadvertently, and they use the bell to command the spirits instead of, doing stuff like cleaning harder to go away forever. Which I thought was a little bit interesting. Because I guess if you're in that time period, like, you wouldn't think of things like, hey, you got a genie, what are you gonna do that genie? Oh, that's easy. We're gonna ask it to grant me more wishes. So if you have a bell that controls spirits, what do you do? Oh, that's easy. You just tell those spirits to leave me alone. Whoops, I didn't want that. I didn't want that noise. Yeah, but you just tell those spirits to leave you alone. That's the interesting thing about Wirt and Greg, is that they have this slightly more modern day, slightly out of place sentiment, and that's not really. It's played up for laughs a little bit, but not really in the Shrek or Robin Williams as Genie from Aladdin kind of way, where it's just making yucks and jokes about pop culture all the time. Like, haha, there's a skeleton. Check out this stiff. Ha, look at this bones. You could eat a bite, take a hamburger, or, something not very funny like that. And this probably also has one of my favorite villains in any Cartoon Network work, next to maybe Aku, I'm guessing, in The Beast, who is simply known as The Beast. He's this towering, malevolent, human-shaped figure where his head is just these glowing eyes and deer horns. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of a funny story. The first time I saw Over the Garden Wall, the next day there was an anime con that I was going to go to, but I was just feeling way too down to actually get up and go to it. Then I watched Over the Garden Wall, and one of my friends that I hadn't talked to since high school just randomly messaged me, "Hey man, I hear you're watching Over the Garden Wall," because I post about it on Facebook, not because they're stalking me. "Hey, we're going to Kraken Con," which is the con that I was going to, like tomorrow, and he's gonna be there. Are you in, or are you gonna be an idiot? So naturally, me not wanting to be an SJW special snowflake cuck, what else do people call people? Millennial avocado, what else do they call them? I already said SJW. Obamacare, millennial again, soy boy, cuck again. Not wanting to be any of those things, I went down there, made a beeline towards that con, and my two homies who works at a comic book shop nearby hooked me up with a dipper hat and small vest, and just told me to wear a red shirt, which is very important. And we were the Pines family from Gravity Falls, and we got to meet Pat McHale, and he was doing autographs. And another one of my friends, just by pure coincidence, I bumped into, and she said, "Hey, if you're getting an autograph, he might do a little drawing. Take this piece of poster board, and maybe he'll do something." So I go up to him, and I say, "Hey, could you draw me the Beast?" And he stops and laughs for a minute, because no one has ever asked him to draw the Beast. Everybody just wants Greg. So now I just have a hand-drawn picture of the Beast in my room that maybe I'll use for the thumbnail. That's not a bad idea. So I asked him to make it out to eBay. No, not really. I'm keeping that with me, and I have it framed now, and it's real great. And I got to meet him, and I didn't know what to say, so I said, "Hey, I hope you're real famous, like those Miyazaki guys." Well, I didn't say that, but I said something entirely ridiculous to basically that effect. And that's a story about that time I met Pat McHale and made a fool of myself, but got a sick drawing. So hopefully, if I was offensive and weird, he doesn't remember. Or if I was really cool, he does remember. It's probably one of those two. And probably the first one, because I'm scary. And that's fine. Ha, just joking, I'm about as scary as a bunch of catfish. Unless if you're afraid of catfish, then, not catfish. Whatever the opposite of catfish are, which I guess would be dogfish. Actually, dogfish might be a little scary, so let's just go with catfish. So, they're tiny sharks, those dogfish. What was I talking about? See, this is the problem with not taking notes. I should take notes in the future. That's a good idea. The beast. He is this devil-like figure, which doesn't really sound very imposing, but just having this sort of omnipresent evil in this type of setting. Although interestingly enough, the beast seems to, um, the best way I can describe it is to be drawing from more pagan religious stuff in terms of its imagery and attitude, but from standard depictions of the devil in how his actions play out. And I know that sounds like the most, standard type of situation, but I feel like this one is a little bit more interesting in that, um, when it comes to the more supernatural elements, they're definitely drawing more from Americana there, which does tend to hover a little bit more towards being friendlier to other religious groups or sections of Christianity that you wouldn't normally immediately think of, that have their own wholly different cultural roots elsewhere, as opposed to the sort of Catholic-ish version. Speaking of which, I've heard a lot of people describe Over the Garden Wall as a retelling of Dante's Inferno, especially because there's just a character named Beatrice who's sort of the guide character to all this, but I wouldn't know because I've never read it, so oh well. I guess that led nowhere. To prep for this, I actually just watched the entire series over again, and oh, funny story, it was actually really hard to get Cartoon Network to get this one onto DVD. So a lot of chumps like me had to go out there and scream and yell and sign all sorts of stuff to get this series, the physical release that it deserves. Because for a long time, it just did not have one, and Pac-Man was just going around a convention saying, hey, if you guys want it, scream, shout, clap your hands, do what you need to. And eventually it did get a release on iTunes, and apparently, because this has just a gorgeous soundtrack and wonderful, wonderful, gorgeous soundtrack. I don't know shit about music, but I can confirm it's real good. And every episode normally has at least one or two very great old timey vocal tracks to it that sometimes relate to the episode and sometimes don't. And for a long time, that just was not available. And he was talking at cons like, hey y'all, I'll be real with you, we want to release it. It's literally sitting on someone's desktop right now as I speak, but there's just too much red tape stopping it. But those MP3 files are just right there ready to go. So I thought someone giving a little bit of insight there was kind of funny. Oh, speaking of insight, when they were trying to decide who to voice, they were like, hey Pat, what did you have in mind for Wilt? And he was like, well, sorry, have I been saying Wilt this whole time? I meant Wirt, because apparently it sounds sharp like an arrow, and that's what he was going for. Well, I had someone like Elijah Woods in mind, and because it's Cartoon Network and they can kind of do whatever they want to, they said, great, we'll call up Elijah Woods right now and see what he has to say. So that's how they had Elijah Woods, and it was great because Elijah Woods is a very good fit for this role. Although that has the side effect of if they ever wanted to make more, that would just be a no, because you have to get Elijah Wood to sign off on it. But that's okay. And again, after a lot of stomping and shouting from fans like me, eventually they did say, hey, we had, a lot of ideas that we actually didn't use because they really liked the idea of having exactly 10 episodes, so a little bit had to get cut. And that ended up turning into the initial, I believe, quarterly Over the Garden Wall comic series, which I actually own, but I just haven't gotten around to reading for some dumb reason. So we'll get to that one day. And after that sold very well, um, that got turned into an ongoing comic book series, which partially tells the story of how this all got started, the story of one of the characters, the huntsman, who appears every now and then to give the boy some good advice, who seems to have some links back to the Beast. As it turns out, the Beast is this entity that requires souls to keep rolling, or something to that effect. And the woodsman character there, he cuts down wood, specifically from these special trees to keep the lantern going that he always has on him at all times. And the Beast, for some reason, wants the lantern, but he just can't quite get his hands on it because the woodsman won't let him have it. And it could be because the Beast has told the woodsman that that lantern contains the soul of the woodsman's daughter. So that's a little bit of an issue. And the only way to keep it going is keep chopping down these special trees. But I guess that it's time for the spoiler time, so we're getting into that now. Not just spoilers for a single episode like before, but for the whole series. It turns out these trees are like people that the Beast has deceived or manipulated at some point. Because in the world of Over the Garden Wall, like, once you lose all hope, it's easy for the Beast to prey on you, I suppose, and turn you into one of these trees where he catches you when you're most vulnerable, and those vines, they're coming for you. And you can make a hentai joke. I'm not going to. It's 2017. Come on, y'all. Get your mind out of the gutter and into a book. I don't know what I meant there. And once he's got you, then the woodsman's gonna come. He's gonna chop you down and put you in that furnace. Although the woodsman did not know until the very end that the special wood that he's been grabbing up is all the souls of the Beast's victims. So that's fun. But yeah, it turns out all that with the Beast, that lantern is not the soul of the woodsman's daughter. That is actually the Beast's soul itself, or the Beast's essence. And it's really great seeing all this play out. Just because I'm spoiling it for you, that doesn't mean you shouldn't watch this show. I've only described 3 or 4 episodes of it. There are 10 of them and a bunch of comic books apparently. So that's real great. You guys should watch it. Something real interesting is the whole reason like why Wirt and Greg are in the woods is very interesting actually. Initially they were just 2 dumbass kids on Halloween night, and Wirt is babysitting Greg, who we find out they're half siblings. And sometimes it gets a little bit awkward where Wirt takes a little bit of his like cynicism out on Greg a little bit, which isn't wholly fair. But if I remember correctly, Pat McHale said that Wirt kind of represents what it means to be a teenager, and a lot of that is kind of being a little bit of a dickhead, but in a way where it's very obvious that if given hindsight, they'd probably realize that a lot of their ideas were not so good, because Wirt certainly does grow a lot in the series. But there are 2 kids on Halloween night, and Wirt is trying to give this CD that he made with all sorts of really bad 16-year-old poetry, and him playing the clarinet to this girl Sarah. And Wirt is a little bit like Dipper from Gravity Falls, where he has huge problems in expressing himself a little bit more, and especially doing it in more meaningful ways where there is emotionally something at stake. So he's chasing this girl all around with all sorts of fun teenage but still relatively understandable misunderstandings, because I guess he bumped into these other girls who said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll just give the girl that CD for or that cassette because it's the 1980s for you." You know, it's actually an interesting recurring theme is young children being put in really terrible circumstances. Not the tape thing, but just that whole genre of awful things happen to children. So they're running around trying to catch this girl, and you know he thinks she's the coolest girl ever, and just really hates the other guy that likes her, who's this weird nerd guy who's real creepy. And I think that more accurately represents the teenage dating experience, where you're not necessarily trying to date the cheerleader because who really is. You're just looking for that one girl you think is cute. And the guy who is also trying to make a move on her is some dumbass high school kid, not like the, oh, I'm a cool jock, I got a car. That's my impression of a high school student. So if there are any high school jocks out there listening, how's my impression? Oh, look at me. I play football. I can drive. Was that spot on? Is that what you guys do? Do you guys do exactly that except for fidget spinners or something? And like do a little dabbing motion? I'm guessing that's what teenagers do. So later that night, they follow Sarah, who's the girl, to the graveyard, and then the cops come. Dun dun dun. But also, the cops showing up is entirely played for laughs, where they're just saying things like, "Hey, you kids, this is private property. Maybe get down from there. It's dangerous up in that tree." And, "Hey, you kids, stop running. That's a little dangerous." And just really innocuous things like that. The cops seem to be really understanding. But the kids don't. So they're running away, and then this leads to Greg and Wirt falling into a river and falling unconscious, and that leads them to being lost. And they're wearing, you know, the seemingly in-period costumes that they are because, you know, it's their Halloween costume. So after defeating the beast, they get to go back home, and we get a great old montage of all the all the wonderful things that they've done and all the people that they've helped along the way. Because generally speaking, even though, you know, this series gets real dark and it's always very menacing and has this sort of Miyazaki meets Don Bluth quality, where, you know, they're clearly feeding on childhood whimsy. There's also this very dark element through literally everything all the time. They do help a lot of people, pretty much, and we get to see a very heartwarming montage of everyone that they've helped along the way. And then we more or less have a happy ending. Also, there is a frog whose name changes every episode. This is the APOC. I'm sorry, not APOC. This is the pinnacle of the old Lowell Random humor. Like, one day his name is Wirt, one day his name is Greg Jr., which they do address as a very confusing joke. One day his name is Teddy Roosevelt, one day his name is Mr. President. And there's also an episode where the frog just randomly becomes a real character instead of just a voiceless frog they've been carrying around this entire time. So yeah, Over the Garden Wall is real good. And I guess I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. So next time we're gonna talk about something else that's probably going to be a horror movie, I'm guessing. I don't know what. It's not always going to be movies here, that's for sure. I actually want to explore things that are not necessarily horror movies. I totally like to talk about horror games. I'd love to. Especially those weird ones that are not Silent Hill and don't clearly fall into normal horror stuff like the Lisa games, or more cartoons that love delving into darker, much darker territory, like Courage, or those Scooby-Doo movies. Maybe Gravity Falls. That would be one for me. Not because it's scary, but because I just want to. Um, I've humored doing The Walking Dead, but that is a real long series, and I would probably have to do something special for that. Like maybe do it a season by season thing. Or maybe the next one will just be Saw 3. I think it's actually going to be Saw 3. Unless if I wait way too long and it's Christmas, then it's going to be Krampus. So who knows what it could be? It could be anything. It could be Saw 3, it could be Krampus, it could be nothing, and I get sick of this. It's probably not going to be that one because I like spooky stuff way too much. So if you like this, give it a good old like or a thumbs up or whatever you do. Subscribe to it to wherever I put this up, probably SoundCloud. Because I like telling people about stuff that's scary in a context that is not necessarily scary. My overarching belief is that there is a spooky thing for everyone out there because horror is a little bit more than just jump scares. Actually, I fucking hate jump scares. In fact, that's the moral. Here on Doom Train, hop aboard, there will be no jump scares. Well, there will be from me, but... Oh, jeez. I gotta think of an exit. Hey all, it's me again. Real nice of my voice not to entirely give out through all that. So that's the end of the show. Hope you liked it. And if you did, will be real cool. I know people say this a lot. Subscribe to my stuff wherever you go to. Be really cool, really helpful. Specifically because when one person sees it, more people see it. Because that's how popularity works now. So next time we're gonna come back with could be anything. It's probably gonna be soft, but it could be anything. So and if you dug this, maybe check out Manga Macabre on YouTube there, where I look at spooky old anime and manga. And also follow me on Twitter. It's real nice. I do Twitter. It's fun. I feel like an old man looking at this newfangled technology going, wow, fascinating. It's like media, but social or something. Over there at Sid Aghast. It's real good. Well, my Twitter isn't. I don't know how to use hashtags. I just know that people say hashtag before things to lighten the gravity of which they say it. Like, aw, dang y'all, I have clinical depression. See, that's sad. But when they say, aw, dang y'all, I got hashtag clinical depression. See, now it's a fun goof. Or at least that's how it works to my knowledge. So go ahead, follow me on that Twitter at Sid Aghast and check out Manga Macabre, and I'll see you next time. We're gonna have another thing that's spooky, and it's gonna be real fun. Not APOC. This is the pinnacle of the old Lowell random humor. Like one day his name is Wirt, one day his name is Greg Jr., which they do address as a very confusing joke. One day his name is Teddy Roosevelt, one day his name is Mr. President. And there's also an episode where the frog just randomly becomes a real character instead of just a voiceless frog they've been carrying around this entire time. So yeah, Over the Garden Wall is real good. And I guess I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. So next time we're gonna talk about something else that's probably going to be a horror movie, I'm guessing. I don't know what. It's not always gonna be movies here, that's for sure. I actually want to explore things that are not necessarily horror movies. I totally like to talk about horror games. I'd love to. Especially those weird ones that are not Silent Hill and don't clearly fall into normal horror stuff like the Lisa games or more cartoons that love delving into much darker territory like Courage or those Scooby-Doo movies. Maybe Gravity Falls. That would be one for me. Not because it's scary, but because I just want to. I've humored doing The Walking Dead, but that is a real long series, and I would probably have to do something special for that. Like maybe do it a season by season thing. Or maybe the next one will just be Saw 3. I think it's actually going to be Saw 3. Unless if I wait way too long and it's Christmas, then it's going to be Krampus. So who knows what it could be? It could be anything. It could be Saw 3, it could be Krampus, it could be nothing, and I get sick of this. It's probably not going to be that one because I like spooky stuff way too much. So if you like this, give it a good old like or a thumbs up or whatever you do. Subscribe to it to wherever I put this up, probably SoundCloud. Because I like telling people about stuff that's scary in a context that is not necessarily scary. My overarching belief is that there is a spooky thing for everyone out there, because horror is a little bit more than just jump scares. Actually, I fucking hate jump scares. In fact, that's the moral. Here on Doom Train, hop aboard, there will be no jump scares. Well, there will be from me, but... oh, jeez. I gotta think of an exit. Hey all, it's me again. Real nice of my voice not to entirely give out through all that. So that's the end of the show. Hope you liked it. And if you did, will be real cool. I know people say this a lot. Subscribe to my stuff wherever you go to. Be really cool, really helpful. Hey all, it's me again. Real nice of my voice not to entirely give out through all that. So that's the end of the show. Hope you liked it. And if you did, will be real cool. I know people say this a lot. Subscribe to my stuff wherever you go to. Be really cool, really helpful. Specifically because when one person sees it, more people see it, because that's how popularity works now. So next time we're gonna come back with could be anything. It's probably gonna be Saw, but it could be anything. So and if you dug this, maybe check out Manga Macabre on YouTube there, where I look at spooky old anime and manga. And also follow me on Twitter. It's real nice. I do Twitter. It's fun. I feel like an old man looking at this newfangled technology going, wow, fascinating. It's like media, but social or something, over there at Sid Aghast. It's real good. Well, my Twitter isn't. I don't know how to use hashtags. I just know that people say hashtag before things to lighten the gravity of which they say it. Like, aw, dang y'all, I have clinical depression. See, that's sad. But when they say, aw, dang y'all, I got hashtag clinical depression, see, now it's a fun goof. Or at least that's how it works to my knowledge. So go ahead, follow me on that Twitter at Sid Aghast and check out Manga Macabre, and I'll see you next time. We're gonna have another thing that's spooky, and it's gonna be real fun. So go ahead, follow me on that Twitter at Sid Aghast and check out Manga Macabre, and I'll see you next time. We're gonna have another thing that's spooky, and it's gonna be real fun.